Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us for the show today, we welcome you in. In 1972, there was an MIT paper published on how society was going to rip itself apart in the 21st century. It's a very interesting study. It basically said that runaway growth would wind up crushing us all. Now, this at first seems like a contradiction, but let's run through the ramifications. Corporations need growth to justify their existence. Companies need to grow year over year to justify their existence. They need profit, and they need to show that they had more profit than they did last year. Same in any department that you might go to, whether it's the accounting department, whether it's the IT department, they all need to show that they're doing more numbers than they were the previous year. They need growth. And whether that growth is day over day, year over year, month over month, whatever it is, they need to be showing their boss, hey, I'm doing more than I was doing last year. They need to show the owner, we're doing more than we were doing last year. Because if not, people get upset. This growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. The Green Bay Packers, for example, are one of the poorer NFL teams. They're not known for having a ton of money. But their side investments last year, they made $120 million just off their side investments. That's not from their stadium. That's not from their ticket sales. That's just somebody on the side who's got some pocket money, and he's almost floated the entire team's salaries. Whatever team that's working down there has almost floated the budget for this team's salaries just off their side investments. Now, it doesn't say what those side investments are, but chances are they're blue chip stock. And blue chip stock is really just the big companies, the IBMs, the Microsofts, stuff like that. The problem with those companies, once again, is growth. And growth is a finite thing. Companies love to promote growth, how they are growing and they have more people than they did last year. But you need resources to drive growth. You need fuel to fuel the vehicles that you had more of this year than last year. You need more metal to make more grommets and sprockets and all those other things. You need more skilled people to grow. And it's an ever-shrinking pool that's available. That's why the MIT study came to the conclusion we were going to run out of resources. Now, let's take water, for example. Water is in critical shortage around the world. Heck, even in Canada, where we have 70% of the fresh water in the world, we have First Nations reservations where they can't get a drop to drink. That's disgusting. It's something that needs to be addressed. But it shows that even in somewhere where the resource is plenty abundant, the locals cannot find it. I'm going to turn to Africa. Africa has a wonderful abundance of resources, both natural and in diversity of wildlife. It's the cradle of humanity. Yet Africa is one of the least civilized places on the planet. Mostly because it's being taken advantage of by companies and countries and all sorts of things for millennia now. I mean, the Romans weren't the first to do it. Maybe the Egyptians were. We don't know who really was that first empire back in the day. But it's been going for thousands of years. Go down to Africa, grab yourself some slaves, grab yourself some gold, grab yourself some diamonds, everything's okay. Bring it on back, everything's good. That's been the attitude, and Africa, in turn, has been shattered into so many sections and fighting against itself for thousands and thousands of years, all because other people wanted their resources. Maybe Africa is the model for our future. Africa has had a very difficult time getting things stabilized, getting things moving forward, because there's so many different political factions and so much rivalry that's down there. And even when they do come up with a resource, like diamonds, for example, blood diamonds would be a better description, it's run by a company that has no particular interest in investing in Africa. De Beers, one of the worst companies in the world. They've controlled the diamond mines for pretty much 100 years. If they find people who have found a diamond, they will have them arrested, locked up, and thrown into jail. That's the power that De Beers wields down there. And now that rare earth minerals are starting to become a thing, China is moving in and buying up the rights. So what benefit is this to the country that has those minerals? Nothing. It's owned by China, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, whoever it might be. Japan has a huge amount of interest in this as well. So their governments are literally selling the ground from under their feet. And the foreign corporations come in, the police give them a barricaded area, and they establish a little colony, mine the heck out of the area for 20, 30 years. And then, even though they're supposed to clean up afterwards, there's nothing that's forcing them to do it. They're going to be on the first jet plane out of there, laughing all the way to the bank. True story. It's happened before. The term banana republics basically comes from republics that were under the control of the banana companies. And it still holds true today. There's so many countries that are owned by companies. And they come in and they do all sorts of things. They'll make the deals. Yes, we'll build the roads. We'll build this. And in return, you give us bananas, diamonds, gold, whatever it is your country might have. The locals see none of the benefit, even though it's promised to them. Whereas before they would live by themselves, now they're given high-rise apartments like the one that I've zoomed in on here. It's an affront to their dignity. But that's the way we're going. Remember, we're just coming off a lockdown, and a couple countries are going back into a lockdown. So those little units that I've zoomed in on, can you imagine 3 to 5 people living in each one of them? That's a lot of people in that building. And that's just one. There's others. If I was a little braver with the camera today, I'd try to show you some others, but I'm not feeling that brave with the camera. So we wind up with people who can only live in an apartment like that, where they're locked in and they're stressed out, even without a lockdown. Even without a lockdown, well, what are you going to do without jumping over each other? And that's the future life for a lot of people. I'm not even saying that it's not true for myself. I can see a future where that would happen. And every single person on this street can see it as well. What happens when we start running down on resources? We've been lucky so far that we've been able to keep things going. Petroleum, thanks to the 1980s mantra of just drill, baby, drill, 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 we do have a whole bunch of resources of petroleum. But they're slowly drying up. Water, as I mentioned, 75% of it is located in one country on the planet. That's not a good distribution. What about the 3/4 of the population of the world? Well, way more than 3/4. The 90% that doesn't live in that particular country. You got to dig. You got to find water. Or if you're lucky and you live in a place like that, you hope it's not like Flint, Michigan, where they just rearrange the reservoirs and pump lousy water into your facility. And there's no way that we will be able to support this many people. We can't support the people that we have now. Supporting people doesn't just mean having a job and money. Supporting people means health resources. People are going to get sick with a lot of funky things, not just a pandemic. Diabetes is a huge problem in the world. Yes, it's kind of funny to be sitting here talking about dwindling resources and diabetes, but they're starting to become more of the opinion that diabetes is genetic rather than something that you develop because you eat too much sugar. The same is possibly true with high blood pressure. Now, whether you have high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's, any of the other wonderful conditions that comes from the fact that we live a nice long time compared to our ancestors, the fact is we need support for those people. We need nurses, we need doctors, we need health facilities. You know what? All those things need significant material investments. Medical machines aren't cheap. The dialysis machine, for example, those things are, well, for last time I checked, were about $750,000. I mean, literally, you can buy a dialysis machine or you can buy a house, and a decent house. This is what makes life so tricky. The dialysis machines are a very complicated piece of technology. The ECG machines are very complicated. Both of them use rare earth minerals. And as our population is aging, we need more and more of those rare earth minerals. So what are we going to do? Are we going to keep exploiting Africa? We're going to keep exploring? The earth is not big enough. And I'm sorry, right now, the whole backlash against space tourism is one of the things that's going to help us out in this regard. If we can start moving people off the planet, then hopefully that will be somebody else's problem in the near future. But even in Elon Musk's wildest dreams, he's talking about moving a couple million. Well, we've got 7.5 billion people on the planet. So Elon Musk's alternative 3 scenario is going to benefit the extremely wealthy and the extremely privileged. For the rest of us, we're stuck on a dying planet. Well, no. The planet's fine. Nature's fine. It's going to survive. It just won't survive in a way that's recognizable to us. And that's the real kicker. The problem with climate change and the problem with the environmental damage that we're doing, Earth is fine. It's going to keep on going. There's a lot of species that are thriving. Raccoons love a city environment. Pigeons love a city environment. Seagulls love a city environment. They don't have to do a single thing, and they're automatically adapted to live alongside of humans and do very well for themselves. Now, a bear or an elk or something like that is not equally as adapted. Because they're big, they make a lot of noise, and they attract a lot of attention. There's probably raccoons squirreling somewhere around you right now, and you don't know about them because they're smart enough to hide their presence. Heck, skunks, they love being around humans because we provide them with easy shelter. So a lot of species are going to do quite well in the new environment. It's just not going to be the world that we know. No more undersea adventures of Jacques Cousteau. No more crocodile hunters showing us how the crocodiles are surviving. Although I imagine the crocodiles are going to do well with increased temperatures. They'll just have to move to somewhere a little more beneficial to their situation. We're going to lose a lot of small creatures that are specifically adapted for a niche environment, but like earwigs, they're not going anywhere. Cockroaches, they're fine. And we're going to get new species out of anything that we do. So the end result is, what happens to us? Humans haven't adapted. I've made this point before. World War I was so horrific precisely because we were taking farm boys who maybe might have seen a car go by once or twice in their life, and threw them into the trenches of World War I, where they were being shelled with planes going over, mustard gas, and all that sort of thing, hitting them smack in the face. It's no wonder there was shell shock in the war. In the 21st century, we don't have a war that's comparable, thank goodness. But the same token, we do have a major struggle. And the struggle is with ourselves. 7.5 billion people are on this planet, and every one of them wants to grow. Every one of them wants to do better than last year. Every one of them wants to be like the corporations. But the difference is, they're just people. Their resources are limited. Look at every one of those windows over there, and there's probably somebody behind every single one of them. That is a lot of people. And that's a lot of money that one apartment is generating. Now, an apartment can only generate new income by raising the rent. So when people move out, new people move in, they raise the rent by $20, $50, $100, whatever it is the landlord decides. And that's how they show year-over-year profitability. Oh, last year we made $100,000. This year we're making $150,000 because half the people moved out. The ones that came in, we charged them an extra whatever. I'm not going to do the math on that. But that's the way. Well, that's what is winding up in our future. Who's going to wind up paying the rent on those units when people don't have money coming in? What happens if businesses reach a point where they can't continue to grow because there's no more resources, there's no more minerals? What happens if people can't find jobs where they can, year over year, keep affording what they need to afford? And what happens when businesses don't show a profit in a year? They start cutting. They lay off staff. And that means people aren't making money, which means they can't afford their rent. So you have to move out of a relatively nice apartment like that one there into a much lesser quality apartment. I think we're still a good 10, 20, even 30 years away from a significant systems collapse. But unless we start doing something, just like the MIT paper predicted in 1972, we're heading for a pretty substantial one. The collapse of 2008 was only staved off because of massive government cash injection into the economy. The government has never stopped putting more and more money into the economy. So we're riding a false wave. Companies are getting contracts and they are making profits year over year, but only because the government is putting more and more money in the economy. The amount of people who've gone back to work after the pandemic has been substantial. Higher than I thought at any rate. I'll give you a mea culpa on that one. But the fact is, sooner or later, the governments can't keep printing money. The companies can't keep finding resources. And all those people that you're seeing in front of you have to find a new place to live. It gets pretty cold here in the winter. So what are they going to do? They're going to live on the streets? They'll freeze to death. They're going to live in the shelters? Well, who's paying for the shelters? Again, we're back into government money and charity money. And what if they are sick? Again, not with a pandemic, but with all the various ailments of life. Depression, anxiety, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. None of them is cheap to fix. But they have to be fixed. We can't leave these people just to suffer. And the government is currently bearing 100% of that expense. Now, I do not want to see any corporate involvement in healthcare. It doesn't work. Put simply, it's one of the most horrible ideas everywhere. You can't reconcile profit and people getting better. At the same token, The government needs to start investing wisely with the economy because they can't afford their current expenditure rate. Sooner or later, it's going to come back. And when the government stops giving out money, how are those companies going to continue to make money? The military-industrial complex is just one example of this. I mean, the untold trillions that go into the military-industrial complex each year is unfathomable. And this new mini arms race that we're gearing up towards does not benefit you, me, or the people in that building one bit. That's all money going from one rich person's pocket to another rich person's pocket. We see none of it. But that's okay. People like Bill Gates are busy buying up farmland, so that way they can offset their carbon footprint. And they can make a tidy profit selling groceries. Because if you haven't noticed over the pandemic, even basics are getting more expensive. Heck, oil that you use for cooking. Even if you're a vegetarian, you're going to wind up using some sort of oil for cooking. That's gone up substantially over the past year. It's hard to find a sale, even on relatively inexpensive oils. And we're not even at the end of it yet. No. They have lots of ways to make their profit still. So what happens in a place, in an economy, where resources are rare, companies have to charge more and want to charge more, and the end consumers simply can't afford it? Again, look at all those apartments over there. It's called a collapse. It had happened in the Soviet Union. It's happened in Venezuela. And we are only keeping going on the strings of government corporate welfare. Like I said, I don't think we have a problem for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. But it's a reckoning that will have to come sooner rather than later. We wish to thank you for listening to the Silverlight Show. If you've enjoyed the show today, please like, share, and subscribe. And once again, we hope you have a fantastic day.